reporter for about a decade before I joined a startup named Celery last fall. I've been doing PR for 6 months, informed by my experience as a journalist. I've gone through a couple successful launches and placed a number of stories in the press, and I'm going to share with you what I learned. Now, coming to PR as a reporter, you can imagine that what I think about most is what reporters want. And I think not enough people know what they want, and if they did, they would probably have more success getting coverage. So I'm going to try to share with you how to think about that. So you've probably all heard of Sam Billey. He writes for Valleyway. There's people have different opinions about what the F in his name means. But in January of 2013, he wrote a post. Actually, in January 2013, he was at CES. He sent out a tweet, and the tweet said, "Tech companies at CES, I will post about your product/service if you send someone to the press room and give me a shoulder rub." Not joking. All right? Now, Turtle Beach, which was a wireless headphone maker, had two flats. Flats are PR people. They had two flats who were very responsive, very entrepreneurial, and they went straight over and they got Sam in a massage chair and they placed their headphones on his head, and he wrote a post about them after that background, right? And he wrote a post about getting the background and about his own tweet, right? And his point was that PR is quid pro quo, right? Quid pro quo Latin, this for that. If you want that, you gotta have some this, okay? In Sam's case, it was the background. Most reporters have more professional expectations of what you can give them. First, let's talk about why PR is important. So all startups basically need two things. They need a great product, and then they need visibility. Product and promotion. You know, once you've got this thing made, you've got to market it. You've got to find a way to let people know you exist. PR is a subset of marketing, and it's the kind of marketing that you can't really pay for. People do pay PR firms all the time, but what I mean by not being able to pay for it is you can't buy stories in the press. The press is broke, but you still can't buy it, right? So you have to find ways to meet reporters' criteria for what makes a good story. Another way to think about PR is kind of the lean startup way. Every startup has a funnel, right? It goes from wide to narrow. The place where PR counts is at the wide end of the funnel. You are taking total strangers and you're letting them know you exist. You're making them visitors to your website, right? So ideally, when you think about the funnel, you think about a shout out in the press, a backlink to your website, and a website, hopefully, that knows what to do with thousands of visitors all of a sudden. Right. So many of you have probably learned in life that one of the main elements of success is convincing other people to do as you ask. With reporters, it's convincing them that you're newsworthy, right? There are different ways to do that. You can sell your own story, or you can figure out other ways to give them what they want. We'll get back to that in a second, the elements of storytelling. Right. So a way to think about every news organization is as an assembly line of stories, right? Reporters are working on that assembly line. Many of them have to write 2 stories a day. All of those stories need to surprise their readers and attract hits. And all of those stories have some things in common. They have usually protagonists, characters, they have companies, they have products. Many of those characters, companies, and products are doing something not just new, but relevant, right? Relevant for their readers. And relevancy for readers is often publication specific. So your PR, and I can only talk to you in general terms now, but your PR needs to be thinking about what the publication is and who they're talking to. Because if you don't want to talk to the same people that they're talking to, then you're wasting your time. All of these points I'm making, or almost all of them, I go into more depth on our website. So you can download our PR guide ebook, and no matter how many notes you take, and I'm happy to see you taking notes. It's all written down somewhere else as well. But just to reassure you, if you miss anything, it's there. Okay, so what do reporters need? Everybody likes capital letters and numbers, so I decided I would say reporters need the 3 I's. They need information, introductions, and ideas. And I'm going to go into each of those. So information is the currency of journalism. You can't buy them, but you can give them really good data. Yeah, and really good data, and the reason why really good data counts for reporters is because that's what their readers want. They want to be informed, and they want to be entertained. So good information in general will give them insight into the world, shock them, maybe make them laugh or outraged, right? So we all know in this age of big data, everybody says, I'm sitting on so much data, what do I do with it? Well, one of the things you can do is try to figure out what kind of meaning you can spin out of it that will appeal to reporters and their readers, right? Look at what you're sitting on, and see if there's a narrative you can tell. So, when I was at Bloomberg, this is on the kind of in the information rubric, and I'll just try to explain to you what it means to give a reporter information. When I was at Bloomberg, and I was there for 2 years on the mergers and acquisitions desk, I handled a lot of scoops. I probably handled more scoops in 2 years at Bloomberg than I did in 5.5 at the New York Times. And we got those scoops from talking to people like you. We would call them sometimes every other day, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly, and they would talk to us about what they were doing, and they would do it in a safe environment. They knew it was unattributable, right? So one of the main things that keeps people from getting strong relationships with reporters is because they're scared of reporters, right? And they're scared of reporters because they don't understand the rules. One of the rules that you can establish with reporters, and you have to do it before you talk to them much, is you say, this is on background, right? Or this is off the record. Most people use those phrases interchangeably. And what they mean is, this will never come back to me. It's unattributable. My name, if I give you this information about something I know, it won't say, Chris Nicholson told me, right? Because that could make me lose my job. Yeah, when you're in a big company, talking to reporters is definitely a firing offense. So unattributable means it won't be attached to me or my organization, right? If you can establish those ground rules with reporters, then you know you're safe to give them something, and they do with it what they want. I'll give you one example that hopefully will illustrate how this works. Last spring, I was talking to a guy in London who was very interested in oil and gas. I was talking to him probably every week. And one week, he told me, they're building an oil and gas pipeline in Kurdistan to Turkey. It's going to be big. You should look into it. So that was all off the record. We started making calls. Bloomberg has a global team. I passed it to my colleagues in Ankara. And we found out that Turkey had signed a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar deal with Iraqi Kurdistan to supply itself with oil and gas. So Turkey is one of the most important companies in the European Middle Eastern region. Iraqi Kurdistan is a place of dubious sovereignty, which may or may not have the right to sell its oil and gas to Turkey, right? Baghdad would say it doesn't, but they did it anyway. And in doing so, they redrew the map of the Middle East because they were selling oil on their disputed border with Iraq. So we had a huge story about peace between the Turks and the Kurds. Redrawn map of the Middle East. Energy security for Turkey. It came out, and everybody was mad because a good scoop makes people mad. Baghdad was furious. Ankara was mad at the leak. The oil companies were all worried that their deal would go through. And all of that came from just one telephone conversation with a guy who wasn't even related to the deal. right? So I'm trying to give you a sense of how information can flow. You don't have to be directly involved in something, but if you think there's something huge happening that hasn't been reported, usually doing a favor to a reporter and probably the general welfare to talk to them about it in a safe way, right? So that's information. Introductions. Some of you may work with PR firms. One of the things that PR people do, that Flax do, is they act as gatekeepers. Reporters come to them, if they're lucky, and say, I need to talk to this CEO. And then the PR person, if the reporter has been nice to them, says, I'll put you in touch with that CEO, right? So they're a gatekeeper, and they make introductions. And more generally, what you can all do, if you're doing kind of DIY PR, is you can think about people in your industries with deep knowledge of their sectors, insights into important events, sexy headlines, Bitcoin, you name it, things that reporters care about, and you can send a message to a reporter and say, hey, I know this expert. He or she may or may not be willing to be quoted, but they can tell you what to pay attention to, right? Of course, you check with the person you're introducing. A lot of those people may love an introduction, in which case you're doing two favors with one email. You are ingratiating yourself, above all, with the reporter, who you probably don't know it, but who is floating off in an office somewhere, reporting mostly by phone. So the more information they can get to important people in whatever sector you're looking, the better their reporting will be, and the more they'll thank you for that. One example, I can't give names, but I know an investor who cares deeply about gender equality in tech. He wants there to be more. He's worked with a lot of startups to try to ensure that they hire female coders. At the same time, I know a reporter at a national publication who cares a lot about that too. I introduced them, right? And they were both really happy. And it's making her coverage of gender issues a lot better. So those are the things you can think about. And obviously what's necessary to know there is interesting people on the one hand, and also what reporters care about. So if you ever have the occasion to talk to a reporter, one of the first things you should ask them is, what can I send you that you give a crap about? What do you care about, right? Find out what they care about, and if you know what they care about, then you have business intelligence about the pipeline of their stories, right? You can help them do their job better. And just like anybody who helps you do your job better is one of the good guys, if you can help them do their job better, all of a sudden you're on their side. And when people are on the same side, they help each other. Okay, here's the third eye, so to speak. The third eye is ideas. Reporters need lots of ideas. You may not know it, but people writing for the tech blogs usually have to write 2 stories a day, right? I don't know about any of you, but I'm lucky if I have 1.5 good ideas per day, you know? So if you have ideas about what's been underreported or misrepresented in the press, if you think, oh, that's not the real story, I wish they would write that, there's a pretty good chance that there's a reporter who could use that idea to talk about something cool in tech, you know, like Celery, for example. We work in hardware, we work with wearables. There is a trend in pet technology. There's a lot of new hardware for pets. Relating to your pet at a distance, remotely playing with them, showing them your face, cool stuff like that. I sent that idea to a reporter, and she was very grateful for it, right? And that's an innocent enough thing. It's just saying, oh, I noticed this pattern, right? I haven't seen it in the New York Times yet. Maybe you'd enjoy it, right? And if you enjoy it, and if the reporter enjoys it, then that's a really good indication that a lot of readers will enjoy it, right? And that's what they want to do. They want to give their readers something to enjoy. They're creating a product. So at the end, sorry, is this good? So after you get the 3 eyes over, if you can give them the 3 eyes, then you can get to the 4th eye, which is, I exist. You know, I have a story. That story is my company, right? Let's talk about it. So here's one lesson you should understand about PR and media. To understand the news, you need to understand the rules. Every publication serves a different demographic. Like The Guardian in the UK, for example, they have a famously young, cool, hip readership. It's not the readership of the New York Times, which is kind of upper middle brow and upper middle class, right? So depending on your product or service, you'll probably get you probably know who likes what you make, right? Once you know who likes what you make, you have to find the publications that are also serving those same people, and then you want to be talking to them. So that's how you reach your audience. The other thing you need to know in general, just to get back to the readers, is what effects reporters want to produce. So I said inform and entertain. What does that mean exactly? News really should be like good gossip. Like when you're talking to somebody in the street and they say something and you say, really? You must be kidding. And if it's true, that's a good news story. You know, all you have to do is Google it, see if it's been reported, and if it hasn't, tell somebody. You know, you'll make the news better, and you'll make your relationship with the reporter stronger. Right, so here's another angle. I told you about the turkey story. Those were facts. Those facts produce in Turkey a great deal of hubbub and excitement. Emotions resulted from it. Facts and emotions are the two things that make good stories, and they're the two things you should be watching for when you think about what you can give to reporters. So when you're crafting a pitch, include concrete elements. You know, as much of the 5 W's, who, what, where, when, why, and 1H, how. Try to include as much of that as possible in as short of space as possible. And also think about emotions. Think about what people will feel as a result of that, and try to ensure that that gets through, that the reporter realizes the significance of what you're saying. This will piss people off. Reporters love to piss people off. The news is a machine to create outrage, right? That's how it attracts readers. So if you know of some injustice, most reporters I know are the first people who would like you to share that. That's it. All right. So just like with most business deals, with story pitches, there's a number of stakeholders. It's not just the reporter. And reporters have trouble making promises like, I will put you on the front page of the Wall Street Journal tomorrow. It's really hard for them to do that. The reason is because reporters are actually often not very high in news organizations. They're like the cowboy on the ranch. You know, they've got a certain mystique, but in fact, they're kind of the field labor, right? Above them are a lot of editors, and those editors are assigning them stories, and those editors are vetting what they wrote. And the editors are saying, I'm sorry, you know, that just doesn't pass the bar. So when you are working with a reporter, you've got to realize this person is in kind of a complex social situation where they're not the sole judge that can say it's a green light. That means there are lags, delays, they come back to you with very annoying questions. They probably feel embarrassed about it. I know I did. You've got to work with that because you're appeasing several parties in a strangely inefficient process. So you want, but the 3 things you need to remember are reporters are writing to amuse and inform their readers. They're writing for their editor's approval, which makes it long and painful sometimes to write a story. And they're writing for their own fame and glory, right? You have to remember, good reporters ultimately will only rise if they make a splash for themselves, right? So when you see a big story, and if you share that big story with the reporter, even if it's not about your company, you've done them a huge favor, right? And as we all know, favors are kind of what makes the world go around. Yeah. So you may not be able to expect that they'll give you some puff piece, like I said, on the front page of the journal, but they will feel indebted towards you, and they'll try to work with you, and that's a working relationship. So here's the economics of the news, right? We've talked about what makes a good story. Why does a good story matter? A good story matters because it gets people to websites, right? It's increasing the unique visitors per month. What you need to know about the news business is at the end of every month, the business people in charge of keeping everybody